Welcome to this presentation on budgeting in a crisis. Thanks for joining us. My name is Dana Gloor. I'm a Maryland attorney and a proud member of the Maryland State Bar Association. The MSBA's goal for this talk is to help Maryland attorneys achieve financial well-being. We're preparing a series of videos on the issue of financial well-being, and we're starting with this one because of the urgency of the current situation. We all know what the current situation is. We're living it. We're restricted from normal activities because of the coronavirus. And because of these restrictions, people are experiencing an entirely new and unexpected financial burden. We're seeing pay cuts and layoffs. We're seeing business closures. Businesses are not generating revenue, and people's income is cut. Just like the rest of the public, attorneys and law firms are experiencing these changes as well. We have clients and prospects who can't afford to pay us. We have clients and prospects who, even if they could afford to, don't want to. And frankly, many lawyers are particularly vulnerable to these sudden economic changes because for many lawyers, our income is variable and unpredictable even in the best of times. Do you have an emergency fund? Over half of Americans don't have sufficient savings to be able to live on for at least 3 months. If this is your situation, you're certainly not alone. So what should you do? We're going to go over each of these steps in more detail. The first step, of course, is to make sure that you have a budget, have a handle on your current expenses, and determine your current savings and expected income, know what your resources are. We'll talk about how to evaluate that information, and then we'll talk about some ideas for actions that you can take to improve your situation. So the first step, of course, is to identify your expenses. You want to know what you were spending so that you can see what your baseline is. It's helpful to gather up your documents, your bank statements, your credit card bills, your check registers, so that you can start making a list of your basic expenses in your normal life. You may need to go back a year. Don't forget those expenses that are annual or semi-annual. Those can be very large payments, and you want to make sure that they're included in your expense list. On this slide, we've listed a number of common categories of expenses. I'm not going to read the slide. You can read it for yourselves. But I've listed them here to help you make sure you're capturing all of your different types of expenses. So I'm going to leave this up for just a moment. For many of us, especially solo practitioners and owners of small firms who are responsible for business expenses out of personal income, if there's no income of the practice coming in and you're going to have to cover it, you should list those expenses for your business as well. Make sure you capture that rent, your utilities, your insurance for the business, whatever else you have. And again, make sure you capture those annual and semi-annual expenses in that element of your budget as well. Some of these expenses are going to decrease naturally. The idea here is to use your past expenses to make a projection of what you would be spending going forward during this crisis if you don't make any changes to your spending, other than those that flow from the restrictions that we're all living under right now. So adjust your normal budget to make a projection of what your spending would look like absent any changes under our new normal situation as restricted. The next step is to figure out what your current resources are. Figure out where your bank and brokerage statements are, look at them, list your assets. Your first priority, of course, is for the accounts that are not retirement accounts, your non-qualified accounts. And I'm not suggesting that you should plan to use your qualified accounts, your 401k, your IRA, any other retirement accounts, unless that's absolutely necessary. There can be tax consequences and penalties, and plus, you'll be reducing your retirement savings and you'll be losing out on any growth that those savings might have achieved between now and the date of your retirement or the date that you might need them. The point of this part of the exercise is really just to know what your resources are. The next step is to try and assess what your income realistically will be during this time of crisis. I suggest that this is a time for real specificity. Be as granular as you can. List the clients, list the prospects, list how much you expect to generate in fees. And think about what those client situations might be a month from now or 2 months from now. And be realistic and frankly, even pessimistic in making this projection. The next step is to identify those expenses that are not absolutely essentials right now. You need to be very clear and frank about this. But this is just the step of identifying. Identifying something as non-essential does not mandate that you have to cut it. You're in charge of your budget. Your budget is not in charge of you. So for now, just identify those non-essential expenses. The next step, of course, is going to be to take action. You should cut your expenses and think about ways to increase your income. The idea here is you're creating a crisis budget. This is temporary. Your goal is to get through this current situation without losing the things that are the most important to you. Even if you expect your income to remain steady, it's still a good idea to cut out at least some of the non-essentials until life gets back to normal. And now's a good time to put any extra money towards your retirement fund. Maintaining a cash reserve will be helpful to you even if you're already in pretty good shape. Here are some ideas for cutting expenses and reducing your cash outflow during the crisis. They're not necessarily in any particular order. Consider all of them. First step, though I just said they aren't in any particular order, is to look at those non-essentials. Use this as an opportunity to get rid of those services that you don't care about, the magazines that you don't read, the subscription boxes that end up as clutter in a corner. Consider canceling or pausing other subscription services, even if you do care about them, just for now. And take a hard look at all of those essential items. Depending on your personal situation, decide how hard you need to cut. You also ought to consider reducing the spending on the essentials that are under your control. Look at your grocery spend. Look at switching to store brands or taking other ideas for how you can cut those costs. And this is also a good time to think about switching to cheaper providers of the services that you use every day. Internet, call your insurance company, see if you can raise a deductible if you have the cash to support that. Call other insurance companies and get quotes and see if you can get cheaper insurance. Find other cell phone providers that might be able to provide the same services or even slightly reduced services at a better cost. Also consider taking a break from putting in retirement savings or college savings for your kids, just for now. If after this crisis is over, you still have the cash, you can always catch up. And also consider taking a break from making any extra principal payments on your debts. Right now, it's about preserving cash. If after you take these steps, you still can't afford even the minimum payments on your debt, or you can't afford your basic essential expenses, call your creditors. Ask what options are available. Get ahead of it. A lot of banks, many credit card companies have specific forbearance or assistance programs that they've developed to help people who are dealing with the economic fallout of the coronavirus crisis. Before you sign up for any of these programs, though, make sure you've read the documents and understand the terms and the implications. Know what the due dates are going to be. Know what your interest rate is. Make sure that you're very clear on what the burden is that future you is undertaking. There are also many banks and credit card companies that are offering increased credit lines. And if you don't have savings or you don't have much savings, you may need to consider getting more credit so that you can have funds available to meet your basic expenses during the crisis. You can apply for a new credit card. You can apply for a credit line increase of existing cards. Be very careful and be very mindful about doing this, though. Use debt as a last resort. You really don't want to create a burden that your future self could have a difficult time carrying once the crisis is over. But right now, the priority is to meet your basic needs. If you're going to use credit, be wise about it. Try to find the cars with the best terms, the lowest interest rates, or good cashback deals. And then going forward in this crisis, follow your new spending plan. I recommend checking in with your finances every day. Log on to your bank accounts. Look at your credit card status. Log on. See what your spending is. Always know how much money you have available to you, how much income's on its way, and know when your bills are due. It's important to plan for your upcoming bills if you're in a tight cash flow situation. It's helpful to make a list of the bills and their due dates. Add up all the expenses that you're going to have between now and the next time you're going to be paid. And make sure that you're going to have enough cash on hand to pay all of those bills on time. If you find that you're not going to have enough cash on hand to pay those upcoming bills on time, again, call the creditors, get ahead of it. Don't just be late and incur late fees. Find out if you can get some kind of an extension. Maybe you can arrange a payment plan that's different than the current plan. Some companies will allow you to change a due date. If you know income's coming in 2 weeks, but the bill's due next week, maybe they'll just let you slide the due date and make a permanent change. There are a lot of companies that are offering a variety of different forms of temporary assistance and flexibility on payments. And of course, if you need to do so, you might have to put your bills on credit cards. Try to avoid increasing your debt, so do this only if it's necessary, but if it's necessary, it's necessary. If you're expecting a tax refund, get that return in as soon as possible. The deadline for filing returns and tax payments has been extended to July 15th. If you're going to owe taxes, hold off on making your filing for as long as you can. But if you're due a refund, get that money as soon as possible. Get that return in. This is also a good opportunity to consider ways to increase your income and to generate cash. Business development is always important and always welcome. There are a lot of resources out there on the internet on different ways to engage in business development, even during this crisis. If business development is not going to result in sufficient income, or if it's going to result in income that is delayed and won't be quick enough to help you, consider getting a part-time job. There are jobs available out there that can be done online. There are other jobs available that will need interpersonal interaction, but it's worth considering. Another option for generating cash is selling unwanted items. This is probably not the best time to do it. It's a buyer's market, but if necessary, consider using services like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or any of the other apps to sell items that you don't need in order to generate some cash. And a creative idea I heard recently is redeem your reward points. This is the time to look through all of those programs and try to convert points into cash or gift cards for stores that you need for essential items. Use those points. Here are some additional resources that might be helpful to you. The Maryland.gov website is always good, and it has several different pages that relate specifically to the coronavirus crisis and resources that are available to Marylanders. The New York Times recently had a very good article about coronavirus and a variety of different resources that are available nationally and some ideas for people to save money and get access to assistance. Bankrate.com is keeping an updated list of all the different banks that are offering help to people in the middle of the financial crisis that's being created here. That's another good resource. Also, you can always call 211, just like you would call 911 for an emergency. You can call 211 for information about resources that are available in your community. 211 is a partnership of 4 different agencies across Maryland. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's free. And of course, please check out the resources that are available from the Maryland State Bar Association at msba.org. MSBA has a special coronavirus page that has information about resources to help Maryland attorneys and the public deal with the impact, plan ahead, focus on well-being, continue to engage in learning, and to stay safe. And of course, as always, please don't hesitate to call the Lawyer Assistance Program if you need confidential counseling or help. And when this crisis is all over, Stay on top of your finances and your budget. Build up an emergency fund. Reduce and ultimately try to eliminate your debt and save for your retirement. Watch for the MSBA's upcoming series of financial wellness videos. Thank you and good luck.